Yang Huo Chapter 17 一杨或遇见孔子，孔子不见，归孔子屯。孔子识其往也，而往拜之，与诸徒。谓孔子曰：来。与而言。曰：怀其宝而迷其邦，可谓人乎？曰：不可。好从事而及失时，可谓知乎？曰：不可。日月是矣，虽不我与。孔子曰：诺吾将事矣。An influential officer, who was in the service of a powerful family of nobles in Confucius' native state, on one occasion expressed a wish to see Confucius, but Confucius would not go to see him. The officer then sent Confucius a present of a pig. Confucius, thereupon timing his visit when the officer was not at home, called on him to tender his thanks. On returning, however, he met the officer on the way. Come now, said the officer to Confucius, I want to speak to you. Now I would ask you whether he is a good man who hides the treasures of his knowledge and leaves his country to go astray. No, replied Confucius, he is not. Is he a man of understanding? Asked the officer again, who is anxious to be employed and yet misses every chance that comes to him of being employed? No, replied Confucius, he is not. Then, said the officer, you ought to know that days and months are passing away and time waits not for us. Yes, replied Confucius, I will enter the public service. 二子曰：性相近也，习相远也。Confucius remarked, men, in their nature, are alike, but by practice they become widely different. 三子曰：为上之于下于不移。Confucius then went on to say, it is only men of the highest understanding and men of the grossest dullness who do not change. 四子之五成，闻弦歌之声。夫子莞尔而笑，曰：歌姬焉用牛刀？子游对曰：昔者言也闻诸夫子曰：君子学道则爱人，小人学道则易时也。子曰：二三子，言之言是也，前言戏之耳。When Confucius on one occasion came to a small town where one of his disciples and chief magistrate, he heard the sounds of music and singing among the people. He then, with a mischievous smile in his look, remarked, to kill chicken, why use a knife used for slaughtering an ox? Sir, replied the disciple who was chief magistrate of the town, I have heard you say at one time that when the gentlemen of a country are highly educated, it makes them sympathize with the people, and when the people are educated, it makes easily amenable to government. Yes, answered Confucius, turning to his other disciples who were present. He is right. What I said just now only spoken in jest. 五公山弗扰以废叛，赵子欲往。子路不说，曰：莫之也已，何必公山氏之之也？子曰：夫召我者而其徒哉？如有用我者，吾其为东周乎？On one occasion, a noble in Confucius' native state, who held possession of an important town and was in an attitude of rebellion, invited Confucius to see him. Confucius was inclined to go. At this, Confucius' disciple, the intrepid Chengyu, was vexed. He said, indeed you cannot go. Why should you think of going to see such a man? It cannot be for nothing, replied Confucius, that he has invited me to see him. If anyone would employ me, I would establish a new empire here in the East. Footnote 82, that is, of China. The imperial domain then was in the western part of China. 六子张问仁于孔子。孔子曰：能行武者于天下，为仁矣。请问之。曰：公、宽、信、敏，惠公则不武。宽则得众，信则人任焉，敏则有功，惠则足以使人。A disciple of Confucius inquired what constituted a moral life. Confucius answered, a man who can carry out 5 things wherever he may be a moral man. What 5 things? Asked the disciple. They are, replied Confucius, earnestness, consideration for others, trustworthiness, diligence, and generosity. If you are earnest, you will never meet with want of respect. If you are considerate to others, you will win the hearts of the people. If you are trustworthy, men will trust you. If you are diligent, you will be successful in your undertakings. If you are generous, you will find plenty of men who are willing to serve you. 7. 佛夕照，子欲往。子路曰：昔者由也闻诸夫子曰：亲于其身为不善者，君子不入也。佛夕以终目盼，子之往也，如之何？子曰：然有是言也。不曰奸乎？摩而不临；不曰白乎？逆而不淄。吾其刨瓜也哉！焉能细而不食？ On one occasion, a noble of a certain state, having rebelled against the legitimate authority, invited Confucius to see him. Confucius was inclined to go, but Confucius' disciple, the intrepid Chang Yu, said to Confucius, Sir, I have heard you say at one time that a wise and good man will not associate even with those persons who are nearly related to him, when such persons have been found guilty of evildoing. Now this man is holding a tongue in actual rebellion against authority. How is it that you can think of going to see him? Yes, replied Confucius, I have said that. But is it not also said that if a thing is really hard you may pound it, and yet it will not crack? If a thing is really white, you may smudge it, and yet it will not become black. And am I, after all, only a bitter gourd to be hung up and not eaten at all? 8. 子曰：有也。女闻六言六必矣乎？对曰：未也。居。吾与女。好人不好学，其必也愚；好直不好学，其必也当；好信不好学，其必也贼；好直不好学，其必也狡；好勇不好学，其必也乱；好刚不好学，其必也狂。Confucius once remarked to a disciple, saying, Have you ever heard of the 6 virtues and their failures? No, replied the disciple. Sit down then, said Confucius, and I will tell you. First, there is the mere love of morality, that alone, without culture, degenerates into fatuity. Secondly, there is the mere love of knowledge, that alone, without culture, tends to dilettanteism. Thirdly, there is the more love of honesty, that alone, without culture, produces heartlessness. Fourthly, there is the mere love of uprightness, that alone, without culture, one leads to tyranny. Fifthly, there is the mere love of courage, that alone, without culture, produces recklessness. Sixthly, there is the mere love of strength of character, that alone, without culture, produces eccentricity. Footnote 83. The most cruel and unmerciful of men, perhaps, is an honest bureaucrat, and the most tyrannical, an upright priest, especially of Protestant dissenting Christianity. Or, as now the species of upright priests is extinct, a disciple of Herbert Spencer. A modern Rochefoucauld. 9. 子曰：小子，何莫学夫诗？诗可以信，可以观，可以群，可以怨。而知是父，远之是君。多识于鸟兽草木之名。Confucius on one occasion remarked to his disciples, My young friends, why do you not study poetry? Poetry calls out the sentiment. It stimulates observation. It enlarges the sympathies and moderates the resentment felt against injustice. Poetry, in fact, while it has lesson for the duties of social life, at the same time makes us acquainted with the animate and inanimate objects in nature. Footnote 84. Wordsworth says of poetry that it tends to nourish the imagination in her growth, and give the mind that apprehensive power, whereby she is made quick to recognize the moral properties and scope of things. 10. 子谓伯于曰：女为周南、赵南矣乎？人而不为周南、赵南，其犹正墙面而立也与？ Confucius once said to his son, You should give yourself to the study of the first two books in the book of ballads, songs and psalms. A man who has not studied those books will be out of his element wherever he goes. 11. 子曰：礼云礼云，玉帛云乎哉？乐云乐云，钟鼓云乎哉？ Confucius was once heard to say, Men speak about art. Art. Do you really think that merely means painting and sculpture? Men speak about music. Music. Do you think that means merely bells, drums, and musical instruments? 12. 子曰：色厉而内荏，譬诸小人，其犹川渝之道也与？ Confucius remarked, A man who is austere in his look, but a weakling and a coward at heart, is he not like one of your small, mean people? Yeah, is he not like a sneaking thief or a cowardly pickpocket? 13. 子曰：乡原，德之贼也。 Confucius remarked, Your meek men of respectability in a place are they who unmercifully destroy all sense of moral sentiment in man. 14. 子曰：道听而图说，德之弃也。 Confucius remarked, To preach in the public streets the commonplaces which you have picked up on the way is to throw away all your finer feelings. 15. 子曰：彼夫，可与事君也与哉？其未得之也，患得之；既得之，患失之。苟患失之，无所不至矣。 Confucius, speaking of the public men of his time, remarked, These despicable men, how is it possible to serve the interests of the country in company with such men? Before they gain their position, their only anxiety is how to attain it, and after they have obtained the position, their sole anxiety is lest they should lose it. In their anxiety lest they should lose their position, there is nothing which they would not do. 16. 子曰：古者民有三急，今也祸世之王也。古之狂也肆，今之狂也当。古之今也廉，今之今也奋力。古之愚也直，今之愚也诈而已矣。 Confucius remarked, In old times men had three kinds of imperfections in their characters, which perhaps now are not to be found. Passionate, impetuous men in old times loved independence, but passionate impetuosity nowadays shows itself in wild license. Proud men in old times were modest and reserved, but pride nowadays shows itself in touchiness and vulgar bad temper. Simple men in old times were artless and straightforward, but simplicity nowadays hides cunning. 17. 子曰：巧言令色，鲜矣仁。 Confucius remarked, With plausible speech and fine manners will seldom be found moral character. 18. 子曰：恶子之夺诸也，恶正声之乱雅乐也，恶利口之富邦家者。 Confucius remarked, I hate the way in which scarlet dims the perception for vermilion. I hate the way in which the modern popular airs are liable to spoil the taste for good music. Finally, I hate the way in which smartness speech in men is liable to destroy kingdoms and ruin families. 19. 子曰：语欲无言。子贡曰：子如不言，则小子何述焉？子曰：天何言哉？40行焉，百物生焉，天何言哉？ Confucius was once heard to say, I would rather not speak at all. But if you do not speak, Sir, asked the disciple, what shall we, your disciples, learn from you to be taught to others? Look at the heaven there, answered Confucius. Does it speak? And yet the seasons run their appointed course, and all things in nature grow up in their time. Look at the heaven there, does it speak? 20. 如悲遇见孔子，孔子辞以疾。将命者出户，取色而歌。 使之闻之。A man who wanted to see Confucius called on him. Confucius, not wishing to see him, sent to say he was sick. When the servant with the message went to the door, Confucius took up his musical instrument and sang aloud purposely to let the visitor hear it and know that he was not really sick. 21. 宰我问，3年之丧，期已久矣。君子3年不为礼，礼必坏；3年不为乐，乐必崩。旧古既没，新古既生，钻髓改火，期可已矣。子曰：食弗道，衣弗锦，与女安乎？曰：安。女安则为之。夫君子之居丧，食指不甘，闻乐不悦，居处不安，故不为也。今女安，则为之。宰我出。子曰：愚之不仁也。子生3年，然后免于父母之怀。夫3年之丧，天下之通丧也。愚也，有3年之爱于其父母乎？ A disciple of Confucius inquired about the period of 3 years mourning for parents, remarking that 1 year was long enough. For, said he, if a gentleman neglects the arts and usages of life for 3 years, he will lose his knowledge of them, and if he put aside music for 3 years, he will entirely forget it. Again, even in the ordinary course of nature, in 1 year the old corn is mown away to give place to new corn which springs up, and in 1 year we burn through all the different kinds of wood produced in all the seasons. I believe, therefore, that after the completion of 1 year, mourning may cease. Confucius answered, if, after 1 year's mourning, you were to eat good food and wear fine clothes, would you feel at ease? I should, replied the disciple. Then, answered Confucius, if you can feel at ease, do it. But a good man during the whole period of 3 years' mourning does not enjoy good food when he eats it, and derives no pleasure from music when he hears it. Where he is lodged in comfort, he does not feel at ease. Therefore, he does not do anything of those things. You, however, since you feel at ease, can, of course, do them. Afterwards, when the disciple had left, Confucius remarked, what a man without moral feeling he is. It is only 3 years after his birth that a child is able to leave the arms of his parents. Now the period of 3 years mourning for parents is universally observed throughout the empire. As to that man, I wonder if he was one who did not enjoy the affection of his parents when he was a child. 22. 子曰：饱食终日，无所用心，难以哉！不有博弈者乎？为之犹贤乎矣。Confucius remarked, it is really a bad case when a man simply eats his full meals without applying his mind to anything at all during the whole day. Are there not such things as gambling and games of skill? To do one of those things even is better than to do nothing at all. 23. 子路曰：君子尚勇乎？子曰：君子义以为上。君子有勇而无以为乱，小人有勇而无以为道。A disciple of Confucius, the intrepid Changyu, inquired, is not valor a quality important to a gentleman? A gentleman, answered Confucius, esteems what is right as of the highest importance. A gentleman who has valor, but is without a knowledge and love of what is right, is likely to commit a crime. A man of the people who has courage, but is without the knowledge and love of what is right, is likely to become a robber. 24. 子贡曰：君子亦有恶乎？子曰：有恶，吾称人之恶者，恶居下流而善上者，恶勇而无礼者，恶果敢而智者。曰：次也亦有恶乎？恶矫以为之者，恶不孙以为勇者，恶节以为直者。A disciple of Confucius inquired, has a wise and good man also his hatreds? Yes, answered Confucius, he has his hatreds. He hates those who love to expatiate on the evil doings of others. He hates those who, themselves living low, disreputable lives, try to detract those who are trying to live a higher life. He hates those who are valorous, but without judgment and manners. He hates those who are energetic and bold, but narrow-minded and selfish. And you, continued Confucius, addressing the disciple, have you also your hatreds? Yes, replied the disciple. I hate those who are censorious and believe themselves to be clever. I hate those who are presumptuous and believe themselves to be clever. I hate those who ransack out the secret misdoings of others in order to proclaim them, and believe themselves to be upright. 25. 子曰：唯女子与小人为难养也，近之则不孙，远之则怨。 Confucius remarked, of all people in the world, young women and servants are the most difficult to keep in the house. If you are familiar with them, they forget their position. But if you keep them at a distance, they are discontented. 26. 子曰：年40而见恶焉，其中也矣。 Confucius remarked, if a man after 40 is an object of dislike to men, he will continue to be so to the end of his days.